When Donna Benedetta arrived at the wedding, the bride's family barely noticed. But by night's end, they'd beg for her forgiveness. The afternoon sun bathed the sprawling farm in a golden glow, its lush gardens meticulously arranged for the wedding of the year. White roses lined the stone pathways, and crystal chandeliers hung from towering oaks, creating an air of effortless luxury. Guests in designer gowns and tailored suits sipped champagne, swapping tales of lavish vacations and multi-million-dollar deals. At the heart of it all were Anna Clara, the radiant bride, and Marcello, her successful fiancé, their love story the talk of high society. Anna Clara, from an influential business family, and Marcello, a driven entrepreneur, seemed the perfect match. Yet, beneath the beauty, a less romantic drama was unfolding. Donna Benedetta arrived with quiet grace, stepping from a sleek black car with Marcello's help. Her soft gray hair framed a face that, despite its years, retained a regal presence. Dressed in a modest yet elegant navy dress, she moved with dignity, her warm brown eyes scanning the crowd with a gentle smile. She'd waited for this moment, seeing her grandson marry his true love. But as she waded through the sea of well-dressed guests, a painful truth emerged. The Albuquerque family, Anna Clara's kin, barely acknowledged her. Vittoria Albuquerque, the bride's mother, stood near the entrance, wine glass in hand, eyeing Donna Benedetta with veiled disdain. Turning to a relative, she whispered loudly enough for nearby ears. Some people clearly don't know the difference between formal and casual attire. Polite chuckles followed. Donna Benedetta overheard but remained unfazed. She'd faced worse. Ana Clara's father, Ricardo Albuquerque, offered a curt nod, no handshake or welcome, treating her as an afterthought. The rest of the family followed suit, exchanging judgmental glances and steering conversations away when she approached. Marcello noticed, his jaw tightening, but Donna Benedetta placed a calming hand on his arm. "It's all right, dear," she murmured. "Some lessons take time." As the celebration continued, the subtle slights grew more apparent. When Donna Benedetta sat at a table, guests shifted their chairs away. Her attempts at polite conversation were met with curt, evasive replies. When she reached for a canopy, Vittoria barely hid a grimace. Marcello's heart ached for his grandmother, yet he knew her quiet strength well. She was unshakable. The Albuquerques didn't know it yet, but Donna Benedetta was no ordinary woman, and by night's end, they'd learned their mistake. The reception buzzed with opulence. Impeccably dressed waiters circulated with trays of fine wine and gourmet hors d'oeuvres, while the Albuquerque family reveled in their elite circle. Donna Benedetta sat at a round table on the periphery, politely ignored by Anna Clara's relatives. She watched as they fawned over a judge, a luxury fashion CEO, and a tech magnate flown in from Europe, laughing too loudly at their jokes and hanging on their every word. To her, they were invisible. Vittoria, seated nearby, swirled her dark red wine and leaned toward relatives, her lips curling into a rehearsed smile. "Marcello's done well, considering his roots," she murmured, loud enough for Donna Benedetta to hear. Donna Benedetta lifted her gaze from her tea, but stayed silent. She'd endured careless words before. Marcello, nearby, stiffened, looking to Anna Clara for a response, but she hesitated, unwilling to disrupt her wedding day. Donna Benedetto's gentle touch on his arm was a silent cue. Not Y-E-T, a T another table. Ricardo Albuquerque held court, his authoritative voice commanding laughter at his quips. His casual remark about outdated traditions carried a clear subtext. Some customs, he implied, were beneath his family's refined status. Marcelo clenched his fists. His family had traditions too: resilience, strength, unity, embodied by his grandmother, whom Ricardo ignored. Yet Dona Benedetta remained composed, her grace a shield against petty disrespect. When a guest mentioned the challenges of managing wealth, Dona Benedetta smiled gently. True wealth is measured by how you treat others. When another mocked humble origins, she replied, "You'd be surprised what greatness comes from places people choose to overlook." The Albuquerques missed her words, but one man didn't. Across the reception, a well-dressed older gentleman sat alone, his piercing gaze missing nothing. His tailored suit hinted at quiet wealth, and his demeanor suggested he was no ordinary guest. He noted Vittoria's sneer, Ricardo's dismissiveness, and the guest's subtle distancing from Dona Benedetta, and he disapproved. Catching her eye, Dona Benedetta offered a knowing smile. Change was coming. The reception rolled on, the Albuquerques basking in their curated social circle, oblivious to the shift brewing. Classical music hummed beneath polite chatter, glasses clinking in toast to the newlyweds. Then the event coordinator stepped onto a small stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "it's an honor to present a very special guest tonight, someone whose contributions to business, philanthropy, and social change have left an indelible mark. Please welcome our honored guest." Excitement rippled through the crowd. The Albuquerques straightened, proud of their elite connections. The gentleman rose, all eyes on him. But what followed sent a shockwave through the family. Instead of heading to the podium, he turned directly toward Dona Benedetta. Silence fell as he approached, offering a warm, genuine smile and a slight bow. "Madame Benedetta," he said with deep reverence, "it's been too long." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Madame Benedetta?" The respect in his tone, the gesture, it was more than casual acquaintance. It was admiration. Dona Benedetta, still seated, met his gaze with a knowing smile. "Ah, William," she said softly, "you haven't changed a bit." The Albuquerques froze. William Morera, the name clicked. Not just a rich businessman, but a billionaire whose influence spanned global industries, built empires, and changed lives. And here he was, deferring to the black woman they dismissed. Vittoria's wine glass nearly slipped. Ricardo's confident smile faded. Ana Clara's mouth fell open. William addressed the stunned crowd. "Many of you know me as a businessman, a philanthropist, but I wouldn't be here without one person. The woman seated here, Dona Benedetta." A hushed murmur spread. Decades ago, she built an empire from nothing, breaking every barrier. She's dedicated her life to philanthropy, funding scholarships for underprivileged students, ensuring opportunities for generations denied them. The weight of his words crushed the Albuquerques. The woman they'd scorned was a titan, wealthier, more influential than they could dream. Ricardo swallowed hard, his career built on knowing the right people. Yet he'd insulted the one who truly mattered. Vittoria, reeling, forced a fragile smile. "Benedetta, dear," she began, her tones syrupy, "we had no idea. You should have said something." Dona Benedetta raised a hand, cutting her off. There was nothing to say, she replied calmly. A person's value isn't determined by what they tell you, but by how you treat them. Vittoria's mouth opened, then closed. She had no retort. Ricardo extended a hand, his smile forced. Madame Benedetta, truly an honor. Perhaps we could discuss. She glanced at his hand, then turned away with effortless grace, a silent rebuke sharper than words. The Albuquerques, used to power and commanding rooms, learned a lesson they couldn't unlearn. Status meant nothing built on arrogance. Donna Benedetta, ever composed, didn't gloat or demand apologies. She simply smiled, returning to her dessert as if nothing had happened. True class, she showed, wasn't about wealth or power. It was about character. And that night, the Albuquerques had none. Music resumed, guests drifting back to conversation, though the air had shifted. The farm still glowed under the golden sun, but the Albuquerques no longer basked in their illusion of superiority. Vittoria and Ricardo sat rigidly, their arrogance replaced by uneasy silence. Their effortless charm was gone, their polished smiles stripped away. For the first time in years, they faced themselves. Had they built their lives on the shallow belief that wealth defined worth? Vittoria's eyes lingered on Donna Benedetta, chatting easily with William, her quiet dignity unmatched by any fortune. Ricardo watched guests now gravitate toward her, eager to speak, to shake her hand. The woman they dismissed now the room's center without trying. Ana Clara, torn between her love for Marcelo and her family's ways, turned to him, shame in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have stopped them." Marcelo studied her, then took her hand. "It's not your burden, Ana Clara. What matters is what comes next." She nodded, grip tightening. "I promise. Our marriage won't be built on the ignorance I saw tonight. I won't let prejudice define our family." Donna Benedetta, overhearing, gave a knowing smile. "That's a good start, dear. Change is about actions, not words." Ana Clara nodded. "I'll prove it." The night ended with the Albuquerques sidelined, no longer the untouchable elite they'd imagined. Whether they'd change was up to them, but one thing was certain. They'd never forget this day. Respect, they learned, isn't about wealth or status. It's about how you treat others. And sometimes, the person you scorn today may command the room tomorrow.